G'day, I'm Adam David Collings, and this is the first in a new series of discussion videos on Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. So this book has 5 parts in it, and I've just finished part 1. I'm going to be doing a discussion video at the end of each part. So you'll find spoilers here for the first 31 chapters of the book, but nothing beyond that. So let's get into it. So I've been really looking forward to reading this. I read Word of Radiance this time last year, and I read Way of Kings the year before. So I've really enjoyed what I've read so far. So we'll start with the prologue. Once again, we're at the treaty signing. So this is the 3rd book in a row now where the prologue has been taking place at the same point in time. But we have a different point of view character each time. And this time around, we've got Eshonai's point of view. So we get to see the Pashendi perspective on these events, which is awesome because it's been one of the big mysteries why on the eve of signing a treaty with the Pashendi did they suddenly hire an assassin to kill the king. I really liked how humans were seen as strange and alien from the Pashendi's eyes. An interesting thing to note is that they had heard of humans before they met. Which is really fascinating because from the human perspective, when the Alethi first met the Pashendi, they were really shocked by the discovery of these creatures that seemed just like Parshmen, and yet they were intelligent. But not so much of a shock from the Pashendi, apparently. They knew the humans existed, they just hadn't seen them for a long time. So they've got a little bit more memory of the past than the humans do, it seems. Another interesting thing that I noticed here is that it said that Voidbringers were trapped in their dull form by capturing a spren. So this was just an interesting note that I kind of made at the time, but we come back to this later. So the big question is here, who were the gods of the Pashendi? Were the Voidbringers their gods? Were Voidbringers maybe a select group of Pashendi in a particular form who were worshipped by the others? Or were their gods something else? And Gavalier seems he's not so honourable after all. He's not the good king that we kind of thought he might have been. Because he basically was seeking to bring about this terrible war, which is kind of upon the world now. And he was kind of deliberately trying to make it happen so that he could make his people great again. Maybe we'll see his point of view later on, but from what we get from this, it doesn't paint Gavalier in a particularly positive light. So, yeah, really, really interesting. Alright, so moving on to the main part of part 1 now. So the epigraphs, which are the little bits at the very beginning of each chapter. So these are quotes from a book called Oathbringer. So again, for the 3rd time in a row, the title of the actual novel is also the title of a book in universe. So who wrote Oathbringer? Was it Jasna? At one of the early chapters, maybe even the first chapter, the author of Oathbringer mentions being a heathen, which definitely fits with Jasna, who was an atheist. Or maybe it could be Dalinar? That might make sense. We certainly see through part 1 he begins to express some views which don't fit in with the popular beliefs of Vorinism. So we still don't really have a definite answer to that at the end of part 1, but I'm thinking it's got to either be Jasna or Dalinar. And you know, it kind of fits Dalinar in a way because Oathbringer is the name of his sword. And, yeah, I don't know. We'll find out, maybe. So, the book looks at the fact that there are some economic challenges because they no longer have Pashendi slaves anymore. And I thought this was just an interesting example of some deep world building. And then we come to our first flashback scene in this book. And our flashback character this time around is Dalinar. And wow, Dalinar, young Dalinar, is really ruthless in battle. This first flashback chapter has really brought home to me the horrors of war. Dalinar is not killing monsters here. He's killing people, human beings. And he just seems so callous about the taking of lives, people who are husbands and fathers and sons. Taking these human lives is just part of a day's work for him, and something that he seems proud of. I found it really quite shocking just how bloodthirsty young Dalinar is, especially in his quest for a Shardblade. He, Sadeas, and Gavilar are invading towns, conquering them to bring them under Gavilar's rule. And Gavilar is not even a legitimate king, it turns out. He's basically set himself up as ruler because he sees that he reckons he can do a better job ruling Alethkar than the alternatives, which is a whole bunch of corrupt, independent Bright Lords. And maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, but the way he's going about it is like, right, I'm going to be king, and let's go slaughter some people until they follow me. These are not the characters I thought they were from looking at them in present day. It's wow. So the Bright Lord that held Oathbringer before Dalinar did calls Dalinar out on this. He says, as if this were about them, as if it were for their good that you loot, you pillage, you murder. You're an uncivilized brute. You're a monster. And it's hard to disagree with him, to be honest. Moments later, Dalinar stands over the man, his son clinging to him, saying, "You can't have my daddy." And then Dalinar kills them both. I'm kind of horrified by this young Dalinar, to be honest. So, yes, young Dalinar is a murderer. And it seems to all be for his personal gain, so that he can get a Shardblade. We always knew that he had a past that he wasn't proud of. We know that at the time when Gavilar was assassinated, he was in a drunken stupor, so he wasn't there to help defend his brother. But this is not what I was expecting. Alright, on to Caledon. It was a lot of fun seeing Caledon come home to the village where he grew up, and showing his parents and Roshone who he has become. I mean, he's basically Superman now, which is just really cool. And for him to show up and they're like, oh yeah, the young dark eyes kid who went off to war, oh look, he's got a slave brand now, and he pulls out his Shardblade, and then he kind of floats up into the air and shows them he's a Radiant. That was a really satisfying chapter. That was cool. I liked that. But now back in the present with Dalinar again. He's now officially the High King of Urithiru. That's not an easy word to say. This kind of makes sense. Dalinar has the skills to lead Roshar through this tragedy, but he doesn't want to depose his nephew. And yet at the same time, he's essentially just kind of pushed him off to the side. Dalinar's not king, but he's running the show. And, you got to have a bit of respect for Elhokar's grace in this. He comes up and says, well, look, I'm your king, but I probably shouldn't be, so I'll maintain rule over Elhokar, but I'll be subservient to you as High King. And Dalinar kind of accepts this because it is logical, but yeah, it's not what he wanted. He didn't want to do that to his nephew. But I really think that Caledon's words to Elhokar at the end of Words of Radiance, Elhokar's been thinking a lot about what Caledon said, and I think that's a big part of why he's made this move. Unfortunately, being named High King doesn't seem to have helped him make any more progress getting the other world rulers to talk to him. And now we've got Taravangian pretending to be all buddy-buddy with him. This is not going to end well. Alright, so Caledon is now getting some insight into the Pashendi since he flew off and met up with them. They've been awoken from their dull form into intelligent thinking beings. but they haven't become the monsters that we were expecting. The Everstorm came through and it's changed them, but, you know, we thought they were going to become these Voidbringers and they're going to slaughter everyone. It's going to be the end of the world. That's not what's happened. And these creatures are not what we thought they were going to be. So this is really interesting. And we don't really know what's happening yet. But, yeah, and these Parshmen were descendants of the original Voidbringers. But, you know, how many generations is that? These individuals are innocent. They didn't commit the crimes that happened millennia ago. So I can really understand their anger at having been enslaved and having their minds dulled. Yeah. So the big news is Dalinar is starting to remember his wife. Now, this has been another big mystery from the past 2 books. You know, whenever someone even says his wife's name, all he hears is static because he doesn't remember her at all. He doesn't even fully remember why he doesn't remember her, but he thinks it's something to do with the old magic from when he visited. Is it the Nightbringer? I think that's what she's called, but she's this friend that kind of gives you a wish and then a curse to go with it, kind of thing. So there's a big mystery about that, which I'm sure we're going to have fully explained by the end of this book. We don't yet know why he's suddenly starting to remember, but I think he's going to remember more and more, kind of in line with as more and more information is revealed to the flashbacks. So we kind of learn about who his wife is at the same time that he is rediscovering. So I think that'll be quite an interesting use of story structure. Alright, we haven't talked about Shalon yet. Now, Shalon is getting really good at light weaving. She's creating new personas. She had Veil from the previous book. Now she has Radiant. And this is not just creating new appearances. She's creating new personas for these characters that she's now playing. And it's really interesting. She's almost getting this kind of split personality thing. I mean, it's not quite, but she's seeing certain areas that she lacks in her personality, and she's making up for them with these other characters that she's creating, and she can inhabit. It's a little bit like with a ventriloquist, how often they'll use the dummy as a way of expressing things that, you know, they would never feel comfortable expressing themselves, but if the dummy says it, it's okay. Really interesting stuff that's going on here. And while Adolin is biting his nails, worrying about getting caught for Sadius's murder and seeing another murder committed in the exact same way, Shalon begins to investigate, and she discovers an evil spren that likes to commit copycat murders. So it turns out that this is an ancient evil of legend, this spren, and it has been enslaved for countless generations, and now it is free. Well, that's interesting. Didn't we find out back in the prologue that the way humanity managed to enslave the Voidbringers in the past was by capturing a spren? So, is this the same spren? Is this the one they captured? And do they now need to capture it again in order to, force the Voidbringers back into adult form again? Assuming that's even the right thing to do. That's kind of starting to be in question at this point. So, Amaran calls Dalinar a hypocrite near the end of part 1. I don't really agree with this. Not surprising. I mean, who would agree with Amaram on anything? I mean, Dalinar is a man who's done some terrible things. No question about that. But he has repented of these things, and he has changed. He has become a good man. This doesn't excuse his past behaviours and crimes, but it also doesn't make him a hypocrite. A hypocrite is someone who continues to do things while telling others not to, basically. He's not a hypocrite because he has changed. Anyway, part 1 ends with Caledon returning to Urithiru, And at the same time, someone else arrives. It's Jasna. Now, we knew from the end of Words of Radiance that she was actually still alive, but we don't know where she was during that book, why she's come back, and what she's up to now. So I can't wait to hear her story, which I'm sure we're going to start to learn about in part 2. So part 1 has set up some really interesting storylines. We've got 3 characters who are much more united this time. In Way of Kings, they were very much 3 separate stories about 3 separate people that kind of came together near the end. Words of Radiance, they were a bit more tied together, but now in Oathbringer, they're even more kind of cohesive. I'm really interested to find out what Brandon is doing with the Parchment. You know, we hear the name Voidbringer, and we get the impression that these are beings of pure evil, like the spawn of Satan himself. But could it be that we're seeing here a history written by the victors of the previous war? You know, they were the enemy, therefore they were evil. Maybe it's not that simple. Is Brandon setting us up here to show us that the enemy are people too? It seems a very Star Trek kind of thing to do. Basically humanising the monster. I have a feeling that's where we're going, which is only going to make this story deeper and more complex. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this all unfolds through the rest of the book. So basically, bring on part 2. So that's all really I have to say about part 1 at this point. I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts, your theories. Did you enjoy part 1 as much as I did? Are you intrigued by these questions? And yeah, where do you think this is going? Just a reminder not to put any spoilers in the comments for anything beyond part 1, if you have read further than that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and let's keep on geeking out over Brandon Sanderson. I'll see you in part 2. Catch you later.